Hi everyone, welcome back to Woodsmything workshop. We are actually in my workshop today. So welcome everyone, and what I'm going to do is, in my Instagram reel the other day, I showed you like my top 5 tools that I'd get for like a beginner, and a couple of people said, oh, how do you use them, or how do they work accurately, can you just show us? So here we go. Steel rule. Difference between a steel rule and a ruler is a steel rule measures from the very edge of the rule, whereas a ruler has this tiny little bit of plastic that runs around it. So the beautiful thing about that is we can push it up to the end of our material and measure from the very end. To make your life easy, so you're not spending ages trying to go back and forward getting it on the end, if you pop your finger on the edge of the wood and just push the steel rule up to it, you've reached where you need to. I'm just going to mark this off in 2 points, and then we'll move on to my other tools. Tri-square. This is the shoulder of the tri-square, and the arm is what we're going to mark down, and that's the bit that goes on the wood. So when you're pushing your tri-square up against your piece of wood, and my piece is very, very small, you need to kind of hear that sound of the two touching. So when the shoulder's touching the wood, if you pinch the tri-square and the wood together, you're going to close any gaps that are in there. If you've got a gap like this, or even a tiny even gap like that, you're not using the tri-square like you're supposed to. You've got to get it nice 90 degrees and push it right up. So because my wood is so narrow, I'm having to mark off of the inside of the tri-square. But if you've got a nice long piece of wood, generally you mark off of the outside. Flip my tri-square over, so I got a lot to balance on the end there. And then what I need to do is turn that over. I'm going to transfer my mark at the top of my piece of material, and again push the tri-square up, pinch the two between my finger and my thumb. That really is the most important part. Make sure it's sitting on there nice and square, and then again transfer those marks to the other side. You'll see that those marks marry up really nicely. If those marks are off, then something didn't quite go right when you were marking up. So check how you're holding it, check you didn't have an air gap, check your tri-square is actually square. Right, so I've got my marks on there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to saw down. I said that I love a Japanese saw. I do. I really, really love my Japanese saw. But the beautiful thing about woodwork is there's loads of different tools out there, and some tools suit other people. So you might not like a Japanese saw as much as I do. There's loads of saws you can get your hands on. What I like about a Japanese saw is the teeth are really nice and fine, and you've got a really, really clean cut. But like I've said, if it's not for you, try other ones. This part of the saw is called the cheek, and these are the teeth. So the teeth are obviously the part that do the cutting. So I can rest my thumb up against my line, and the cheek of the saw can rest up against my thumb. It's not going to cut me, okay? Obviously, if my thumb was underneath the saw, then that's not where it should be. But I can rest my thumb there, and I can drag the saw back once, twice, 3 times. Now I've got a groove that the saw will sit in, and I can concentrate on sawing backwards and forwards. It's really important that my position when I'm sawing is clear from the saw. So I am right-handed, so I stand to the left. Okay, I keep my arms straight and in line with my saw. I'm not leaning over my saw to look this side. I'm not trying to look from this side, and I'm definitely not standing directly behind my saw, because every time I saw, I'm going to elbow myself, and I'm not going to be straight. I'm not going to have the room I need. Okay, give yourself a little bit of space. Stand to the side, keep your arm nice and straight, and look down the top edge of the saw blade, and that top edge is going to make sure that I'm square. I'm lining it up with my line at the back, but I can also lean over and check my line at the front. Cutting on the waist side of the line, because that is where I want to be. I don't want to cut away from my material that I want to keep. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So again, put my thumb on my line, draw back 3 times. I've got a groove. I'm now cutting on the waist side of my line. Looking down the top of the blade, checking on each side that I'm staying in line. Okay, so now I've got my saw cut down, I'm going to just chisel this piece out. Okay, I like to clamp my workpiece to my workbench so it's nice and secure. The reason why you want it to be secure is when you're chiseling and using a hammer, the vibrations are going to run through your chisel and then through your wood, and if your wood's bouncing, the chisel's not going to be making the impact that you want it to. When using your chisel, you need to look for the beveled edge, and that should be facing away from you, because your chisel's going to be working out that way, paring the wood away in that direction. If my chisel is facing into me, then I'm going to be eating into my material. The first thing I need to do is to make a nice groove right along the back edge of where I want my joint to end. And by doing this, my wood won't break away further from there. Okay, if I just start chiseling that straight off, that whole thing is going to buckle and splinter and it won't give me a nice clean edge. So I'm just going to do that to run it along the back edge, then I'm going to start chiseling away from the edge. When you're holding a chisel, hold it as low down as you can on the actual metal part of your chisel. Okay, and I'm going to angle my chisel slightly just so I can pare the wood away. If I try and go straight down, all the way down through the wood, the bottom part could splinter out, and we don't want anything to splinter. So starting by working away. And you're just paring the pine away from the edge of your joint, and just keep working backwards. And you'll notice I'm not trying to go all the way to the bottom. If I don't go all the way to the bottom, my wood could splinter out underneath. And I really don't want the wood to splinter out underneath. One more. Okay. I'm going to turn it over. I cheated a bit there. I should have had a pencil line, but I will do it now just for speed. So that is the end of my joint. Transfer that over the top. You can see I'm pinching my tri-square and my piece of wood. Transfer that line all the way over. Now I know exactly where I'm going to. Make sure it's clear underneath. If that's sat on top there, I've got nothing supporting underneath my wood. It's all going to splinter. So make sure it's sat on a nice clean surface. If you have a nicer worktop than me, workbench than me, you might want to cut this onto a scrap piece of wood. Right, so now I'm going to be paring away and it's going to start meeting that part. So I'm going to do the same thing, hold the chisel nice and low down, give myself a straight back edge, do that exactly on my line so you can just about see that, tilt my chisel, chisel away. Now a chisel isn't dangerous when both of your hands are behind the tip. If I had a hand here in front of the tip, then that would be very dangerous. Okay, as long as I've got one hand holding the chisel and one hand hammering the other end, the chisel isn't dangerous to me. All the time I'm chiseling away from myself. Right, now we're getting closer to that back line. I'm going to do one more at an angle, and then I'm going to go at it straight. And because I've removed a lot of my waste, the chisel won't be forced into the wood that I want to keep. Only going halfway down because I'm going to come at it from the other side. Final bit. Okay. So again, holding it slightly more upright now. There we go. There we go. Just clean up that last edge with one final little chisel, and that will give you a nice straight edge, in this case a finger joint. If you want to do your last part with a file, that obviously would work too, and I'll show you how the Shinto rasp would work. But there we go, nice clean edge. A little bit there that just needs to be filed away. Okay, so Shinto rasp. Honestly, this is my little beauty. This is a gem. I love this. On one side, you've got quite large teeth, which makes it the rough side of the rasp, and then on the other side, you've got much finer teeth. The difference between a Japanese rasp and a file is a file normally has like a serrated edge, so you can actually use the edge of the file as well, rather than just the face, but this rasp doesn't, so you can only use the two faces. You can also get half moon ones for doing curves. I'll just show you how this works really, on the top edge of this, so you get the idea. When you're filing or using a rasp on anything, you want to start on one end and not just work sideways across the piece that you're filing or using the rasp on, but you want to start at the beginning of the file and end at the end of the file. So to sort of show you what I mean, I'm going to start at the beginning of the file on one end of the piece, and I'm going to work across it to the end of the file, and that way you're using the whole thing. It's like when you're sawing, you use the whole saw. So let's say I wanted to just take a little bevel off of here. I'm turning my hand slightly to make it a rounded bevel. But you can see how quick this is. I mean, it's like, and the shavings are just nuts. It's just like the most insane tool. Get backwards a little bit. When I'm making chairs, this is my absolute go-to after I've used the spoke shave. So once I've used the spoke shave to shape it and make it, you know, tactile, I would use my Shinto rasp to just really finish off those edges. So can you see the profile on that now? And that was what, like, I don't even know, 10 seconds? Time flies when I'm in here. But that's like perfect now, ready. Little sand, and you've got a nice little bevel. I mean, it really is a dream of a tool. If you want to make something that you want people to touch and feel and round off and stuff. I love it. So yeah, that's it. They're the 5 tools. I think they're all 5. And a few little tips and tricks on how to use them and hold them and work with them safely. So I hope that's helpful to someone out there. I am aiming these videos at younger people. I have a young family, and I want people to be interested in woodwork and feel like it's safe to do. And it wasn't something I was encouraged to do as a kid at a very young age because it was deemed like unsafe. But I think if you use everything properly and safely and carefully because someone's shown you how, then you should be fine. You know, the biggest thing is you never take a chisel and hold a piece of wood like up against you or on your leg and chisel down towards yourself, because that's just dangerous. Yeah, you know, you never hold the piece of wood that you're chiseling either, because you could slip and go into your hand. And of all these tools, the chisels are probably the most dangerous, but that's because of using them in an unsafe way. So as long as both of your hands are behind the chisel, you'll be fine. And as long as you don't put your hand underneath the saw when you're using it, you should all be good. So I hope that's really helpful, and yeah, thanks for watching.